But we're happy to host for our second year an intro to backcountry skiing and splitboarding. And really, this talk is a promotional talk just to go over all the gear you need for skiing and splitboarding and really cover just some bases because it's a lot of information and it's really complicated. Um, and there's often some confusion, especially when you're transitioning from a resort. So, what's going on? Anyway, I'm Derek Sakamoto. I'm one of the co-school directors, or co-directors of this school. I live in Denver, been a backcountry skier for about 5 years. I grew up as a mogul skier, have an ARI level 2, and a wilderness first responder. And then I do a lot of way too many things for the CMC as a volunteer. Kaylee.
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Kaylee Toothell. I live in Boulder. I'm a split boarder, so I'll help you guys with your split board questions today. I started in the backcountry in 2009 and spent a couple of seasons on snowshoes. So quickly transitioned to split board. I'm also, ARI certified, involved in the CMC a lot. And I'm going to try out some hard boots this season too, so I can answer questions on soft boots and hopefully hard boots. Yeah. Thanks for joining, everybody.
Yeah, and so for the point of this talk is, again, to just get everyone a good overview of all the gear that's needed for going in the backcountry. There's a lot out there. Your layers are different. The amount of gear you need to bring is different. The skis, the boots, the bindings, all of that is also different, especially for skiing. But backcountry skiing is also just a dangerous sport, and there's no gear is substitute for any kind of education and practice with that gear. A lot of times people have come here, and especially last year, they're like, how do I get in this as cheaply as possible? And one thing to remember is that since it's so personal and how involved it is, your gear preferences will evolve with your interest. And also with that, it's important to really invest the time and money for like getting high quality gear. And Kaylee brought up a good point, which is in the chat. If you do have questions throughout our lecture, please just enter them in the chat. We have a bunch of our instructors on the call where they're happy to answer, and we can also take inventory of other questions coming up. So, and overall, we're doing this to talk more about a class that we have for intro to backcountry skiing and splitboarding, which is really helping people transition from the resort to the backcountry. Some key concepts to consider, especially about the gear and why we need to talk about gear, is that alpine touring or backcountry skiing isn't the same as resort skiing or snowboarding. It's a lot of walking all day long. It's more like hiking and then you get to ski a little, or taking your gear for a walk is the cliche that Kaylee uses. It's also really important to be honest with your ability because you're in the backcountry. So even though you may send something in a resort, you have to remember that if you get stuck or you get hurt, it's pretty much self-rescue. And that makes things much more intimidating. Also, you need to consider the safety of not only yourself, but also your partners too. I mean, avalanches become a big topic, but at the same time, there's even simpler things other than avalanches, like, whether you're going to hit a jump or push your abilities, what kind of position is that going to put your partners in? And last is you really want to just think about your gear fairly holistically. And there's a bunch of ways to save money that aren't necessarily intuitive because they may be able to resell for higher or something like that. So and we're going to just kind of cover all of these bases. So starting with skis, the skis are quite different. So a lot of times you'll notice that when people are looking at touring skis, they may have the similar dimensions of what your resort setup is, but often they're a lot lighter, and that's mainly to save you energy going up. But this also means that they're less durable, less damp. You aren't going to ski them as hard. You may want a profile that is called like more playful and less chargy. For Colorado, you're looking for a width between like 95 and 110 millimeters if you're looking for something every day. We don't have a super deep snowpack. We don't have a super heavy snowpack. And there's a trade-off, because the more float that you get, the more that it's going to carry snow. Very similarly, there's another trade-off of the narrower the ski, the less float that you have, and the harder it is to actually go up the skin track or break trail. There's a bunch of other concepts that are more specific, but like taper, tip taper, tail taper, turn radius, and materials. But overall, there's a lot of resources out there, and you're looking for skis that are probably going to be more playful, because again, you aren't going to send like 30,000 feet in a day. You're probably going to ski like at most like 3,000 to 6,000 feet in a day. So that's like if you're super fit. Kaylee?
Yeah, so split boards are a relatively new concept. It allows us to be able to skin up or travel up a slope, much like a skier, and then we get to put the board together and ride down like you would on a normal snowboard. So a lot of people have not seen these yet. A lot of you maybe have seen them or even own them already. So I would say that when you go shopping for them, go to a shop, talk to the shop techs about specifics. But in general, it's similar to picking a normal snowboard, right? Especially the size. They used to say longer is better. I disagree. I would stick with a board that's similar to what you ride currently inbounds. You can size up maybe a little, but not too much, right? We like to think that we're always riding powder in the backcountry and we need a long board, but we don't. We encounter all sorts of conditions. So, a board will float. You can adjust your stance and things like that to help with the float on powder days. And then if you are riding in the trees at all, you do want a board that's nimble enough to make quick turns through the trees. Same with shape. So an all mountain directional board is fine unless you really are into like freestyle and you want to look for twin tip. You can definitely find twin tip split boards. I'd recommend for beginners just all mountain directional. And then you've seen some crazy different shapes. So those are mostly for all powder conditions. If you have a lot of experience and you start wanting to build a quiver of different kind of boards, you can start looking at those. And then weight. So another big thing for split boards, you'll often see regular split boards. You'll see carbon split boards. I think same with skis. Carbon's a little lighter. A lot of people like this when they're bringing a lot of gear on ski mountaineering expeditions, when you're traveling uphill a lot and skiing just a little bit where weight really matters. I don't prefer carbon. Some people do like it. Just know that, it'll make the uphill a little easier and lighter, but on the downhill, it may be a little bit more chattery. So those are kind of the big things to look for, but similar to your resort board, size, shape, and then talk to a shop about specifics and also inventory. Another side piece on skis and split boards this year, as it was last year, that inventory is very, very low. Even the major manufacturers right now don't have much on their webpage. The best place to go to find inventory is actually your local shops. The retailers and the brands are trying to fulfill the shop orders first before they start putting excess on their website. So if you can't find it on their website, please, call around to your local shops and see what they've got.
Yeah. Great. And then for bindings, this is probably the biggest thing that's different for skiers, where a pin binding or a tech binding or low tech binding is generally the standard. The reason is that it's lighter weight, but it doesn't have the same releasability values as a normal alpine resort binding. There's some new alternatives that are kind of a hybrid version. So the Shift, the Duke, the Cast are all kind of hybrids of this. There's a lot of debate on what should be used where and how finicky each one is. And there's a lot of pros and cons to it. For me, I just find that using a dedicated setup with a pin binding for the backcountry just works a lot better. And I've seen and heard a lot of complaints about the Shift, but in Solomon's defense, they also say that you have to really take care when you're using a Shift, and that's true. So I've skied the Shift too. It's fine. And then there's frame bindings. At this point in time, it's pretty much a last resort. If you're trying to do something really on the cheap and getting something used, it may be an option. Kaylee?
Yeah, and for splitboard bindings, these are significantly different than what you're used to riding inbounds. There's kind of two camps here for splitboard bindings. There's ones for your soft boot, and then there's ones for a hard boot setup. So for the sake of this lecture, I'm just going to talk about soft boot bindings. Hard boot is when you actually want to start getting into more ski mountaineering. Long days, you're actually wearing a ski boot. So for beginners, intermediates, just anyone in general, I 100% recommend soft boot bindings. You'll often see them with pins in them, the older ones. I'd try to stay away from the pin style if you can. They're fine, but the newer soft bindings have progressed with a much easier mechanical interface without the pins. It's a little more reliable too. And then there's several main splitboard companies that you can look for. They have different price points, different selling factors. Spark R&D is probably the most popular, has the best price point. It's really reliable and probably the easiest to find around shops. Their website was sold out last year. There's also Union, which is really good. There's Karakoram, which is also good, pricier, but said to have the most feel as your solid board binding. Volet is another great one, and Burton makes a binding as well. So just consider, you're going to have some interface on your split board. So make sure your binding, whatever brand you buy, works with that interface. Spark has pucks on the board. Karakoram is a little bit different of an interface. So again, like the shop will help you make sure you get all those specific parts.
And the interface is how you slide the binding on and off, right?
Yep. Because you're going to need to take your binding on and off when you're touring. So this is a little different than inbound. So when you're touring, you need to have them in one orientation. And then when you transition to go downhill and you put your board back together, you need to take your binding off and then put it on the board so you can ride it down. So these bindings come on and off your board a lot.
Cool. And then the last part is for okay, that's a great question, Craig, and we will come back to that at the end. So the last hard goods that we're all probably familiar with are boots. There's a variety of ski boots. They all have walk modes, and the real thing too is just kind of, for me, I ski this middle boot here, the Maestrale RS, mainly because I wanted something that was a little lighter but still held up to my weight and the stiffness I expect in my boots. But if you go lighter, you can go lighter and more variable, or you can go heavier. The real question is kind of like, what are your objectives and what are you skiing? If you're skiing like a much heavier ski than, maybe something that's more 50-50 oriented, much heavier ski with a hybrid binding, more, that you're going to just use one setup for everything. If you're going just really lightweight and your main objective is to just get a lot of mileage in, like Jake, whose birthday is today, then maybe you want to go for a lighter, more, walkable boot. So, there is a lot of differences across all of them, and it gets into, again, a lot of personal preference. And really the best resource for this is your local shop. But, go find something, the boot that fits you, because that's really the most important thing. And don't think that, it's like your first year out there that like all of a sudden you want to go spend your whole budget on like a race boot. So Kaylee.
Yeah, and splitboard boots, kind of the same thing what Derek said about, wear what's comfortable, right? Make sure they fit your foot. Boot fitting for splitboard boots is not quite as important as ski boots because there's not as many moldable components or things they can do to make it fit your foot. But basically, the boot you have currently for snowboarding is perfect. Don't go out and buy anything new. Use that boot. I use my inbound softboard boots all the time. I've experimented with different boots, heavier boots, soft boots with gaiters, right? And honestly, it doesn't matter. It's just something that you can walk in a lot. Your foot's going to be moving a lot more because you're actually, traveling many miles uphill versus just sitting on the chairlift with them. So wear something that and if your boot happens to have like a Vibram Michelin Continental rubber on the bottom, that's great because that just helps if you do have to get off your splitboard and boot pack a little bit. That'll be great. And then in the future, if you do want to get into ski mountaineering, there are crampons, universal crampons that you can fit right over your soft boots. I've been using Gravel G10s on my soft boots for years and they're fine. If you do think you're going to get blisters or hot spots for skiing or snowboarding, just tape those up ahead of time because any little problem that you're going to have, it will definitely surface in the backcountry when you're out there for hours. So a lot of people I know just pre-tape their heels or those hot spots before they go out. Yep, I do too. And then hard boots are actually ski boots. I mentioned this a little bit before, and they require a hard boot or a hybrid setup on your split board. So you actually use like a ski toe piece from the binding, and then you use a different kind of split board binding. So again, they're complicated. And I think once you progress and you start using your soft boot and you get an idea of what you want to do in the future, hard boots may be an option for you.
Yeah. And I think Kaylee brought up a great point, that making a walkable ski boot is like, and snowboard boot for that matter, especially for the amount of mileage that you will do, and then having it still have the stiffness and retention that you have to control on the way down is just like a really hard problem to solve. And, a lot of times hot spots just happen. Heat moldable liners on your boots is a great thing. Last is other hard goods. A lot of people have heard about skins, and they're just what goes on the bottom of your ski or split board to get traction. But I think actually the reason we have this more is that ski poles is more foreign to the snowboarders that are switching to split boarding. So, Kaylee.
Yeah, so that's another piece of gear that you will 100% need as a split boarder. You will need collapsible poles, not the rigid ones that you see in the ski resort. So I like the Z poles, the ones that are farthest to the right. I think most split boarders use these because they fold down the smallest. You can put them on the compression straps on the side of your pack. You can put them in your pack, but you'll need them to help you when you're skinning uphill. And sometimes on the downhill, you do want to leave them out because if you've got rolling terrain as a split boarder, you guys know what happens. You just stop and you can't as easily take your back foot out and skate, right? Sometimes the snow's really deep, so you actually need to use those poles to help you get out of situations.
Yeah, I think the only note for skiers is if you ski like super short poles in the resort like me, I mean, I like to have adjustable poles in the backcountry mainly because I'll make them longer to get a little bit better movement in the backcountry, like as if you were cross country skiing. So, cool. So clothing is like what I found to be surprisingly like the most important thing, and like thing I was least prepared to spend money on when I started skiing in the backcountry, but it's really important to work with and like find layers that and systems that work for you. And Kaylee, do you want to?
Yeah, I think most people here have probably taken some CMC classes, and you guys know about layering, right? Synthetic base layers are the best. Leave your cotton at home, your cotton socks at home, all of that stuff. So typically in the backcountry, you wear your base layers. Some type of synthetic merino is great. You'll have a mid layer, so some type of synthetic insulating layer, whether that's a fleece or a light synthetic puffy that you'll wear on the uphill. You're going to generate a lot of sweat. So the goal is to try to not to sweat, although that's really hard to avoid. So, when you're touring, you're going to take layers on and off a lot. So consider that, consider if you want to buy an anorak or something that's pullover, like how hard is that to just take off and put back on? And then shells, we love 3-layer Gore-Tex. We love event fabrics. Those truly waterproof fabrics are great, especially when you get into spring skiing and you're out there and, you could get them saturated a little more. Gloves, 2 pairs, always 2 pairs, just in case something happens. I usually skin in a light liner. And then I have another glove that I put on over, and sometimes I even carry like emergency mittens. I tuck them behind my shovel, which we'll talk about in a little bit, in my pack. And then always a down puffy or a very warm puffy. And I think this is just typical for any adventure you go on, whether it's, hiking, climbing, whatever, just for emergencies.
Sorry, Kaylee, I was also caught up in the chat. Like, there's a lot of good comments coming in from our coach at our other instructors, but yeah. And a key is just you don't want to sweat on going up. Did you cover that?
I did mention that. It's really hard not to sweat, but we'll talk about this in the course if you sign up for that too, about efficient transitions. And we want to make sure that we're removing layers if we start to sweat, and that we keep our stops pretty quick so that we don't start getting cold if we're sweating too.
Yeah. And I think a big thing with that as well is that, in our specific climate, in Colorado, where it's not the most moist or dense snow, a lot of times, people go with soft shell pants or something like that are just a little bit more breathable too. So,
yep, that's definitely an option. I always wear like full on shells. I don't really wear soft shell stuff, but I know that it's absolutely great here in Colorado. And also, if you've got an insulated jacket that you wear at the ski resort now, that is not going to be good for the backcountry. So, if you've got just one of those big bulky jackets, you're not going to be able to skin in that. And even if you want to stuff that in your pack to wear as your outer layer on your way down, that's just going to take up a lot of room and it's heavy. So just if you can, I would say go for just a soft shell or a hard shell jacket as your outer layer.
Yeah. And even on the base layer level, I also go down normally because you do generate a lot of heat walking that much. So cool. Avalanche safety, a big portion of why we made this class is there's a ton of avalanche education, and there's not a lot of education on just how to get comfortable in the backcountry. What are the tips and tricks that you need to know? And so, but nonetheless, avalanche safety is critically important. The three, typical pieces of gear that you always need are a transceiver or beacon and a 3 antenna one. I personally use the Berry Vox S that's pictured there, but there's plenty of options. A shovel, and then a probe. Some people say you need to go 300 centimeters in Colorado, and I don't believe that. And airbags, it's a highly debated topic and very much so a personal preference. Kaylee,
yeah, these are the three pieces of gear that if you want to go out on a backcountry tour, people are going to ask if you have these three pieces in your ARI avalanche education, right? That's usually standard. So even people that try to go up to Berthoud Pass, I've seen them without backpacks, and I know that they don't have any gear in those backpacks, or there are no backpacks, right? So don't be that person. Get your gear, bring a backpack. Yes, it's a little heavier than what you're used to, but I promise you'll once you get used to carrying a pack with this additional weight, you're not even going to think twice about it. So I think the shovel is important right here, that it fits in your pack. There's a lot of different shovels. Some people say bigger is better. Just make sure it fits in your pack, and the probe too. And everything goes in your pack. So when you're all geared up, don't put your shovel on the outside of your pack. Don't put your probe on the outside of the pack. There's many reasons not to do this. They all go in the pack.
Yeah. And again, people ask you this, and it's important to go out with partners. And the reason they're asking if you have this is if they get in trouble, they want to make sure that you can rescue them. So, and then there's a whole host of all the other things that you need to bring with you. And we cover this on a couple slides. But first is you need something to store everything, which is a pack, generally around 30 or more liters, with an emergency gear pocket. This is definitely one of the areas where your preferences will evolve over time. They all have different carry options called A-frame, diagonal. There's a board carry, there's side and back access options, and you're really looking for comfort and fit. And again, you may or may not choose to use an airbag. Do you want to talk about the right side of the slide, Kaylee?
Yeah, and I'll add a little something about packs too. I know Jacob here can go down to a 9-liter pack. I tried to use something as low as a 15 with basic layers, and there's really not much room left in there once you put all your gear. And then consider if you shed layers, right? All those layers that you shed that you may have started out with need to fit in your pack, right? If it's windy, you don't want them to fall off your pack. Make sure your pack fits, make sure it's comfortable, because it's going to be on your back and you're carrying more weight than you normally would with all the extra gear in it. But yeah, the right side. So in addition to your transceiver, your shovel, your probe, your layers, your food, your water, some of these things are excellent to have. So these Volley ski straps, I'm sure you guys have seen them all over the place. They have saved so many butts in the backcountry. Binding brakes, they're great for that. There's 100 million applications for these. So throw a couple of them in your pack. They come in all different lengths, all different colors. They're perfect. A helmet, please wear a helmet in the backcountry. They make lighter ones. This one is a Solomon one that's pretty light. It's rated for skiing and climbing. So if you do get into those ski mountaineering expeditions in your career, that's great. A lot of the packs have a specific helmet carry. Otherwise, you can dangle it on the outside of your pack. It may fill with snow if it's snowing out, but please wear a helmet. I actually carry my resort helmet, which is pretty light in the backcountry, and that's totally fine. So don't think you need to go out and buy a new helmet. If you have one, just use that. Goggles, I think this goes without saying. If it's super cold, super windy, snowing, goggles are great. Although Derek's got a picture of pit vipers. So there are a lot of brands, sunglass brands, goggle brands, you name it, that have come out with goggle-like sunglasses. So you're wearing sunglasses usually anyway on your way up to skin. And then instead of just switching into goggles, you can just leave these big sunglasses on. Some people prefer that. They breathe really well. POC, Smith, you name it, they make big sunglasses. So if you just want to carry one, that's an option. And then water. Please do not bring a Camelback with you unless you know it's going to be very warm. So I think we all know that these freeze, even the insulated tubes freeze. If you have a system where, you've tried it, it doesn't freeze on you, you tuck the hose in the back of your pack or in your jacket and it doesn't freeze, go ahead and try it. But I would say when you're starting out, put your water in a Nalgene or a Hydro pack. It's not the most convenient because you have to dig it out every time you want to drink instead of having the hose right there, but you want to just make sure that you have water in the winter.
Yeah, I often get back from a ski tour where I feel super dehydrated, and I am because I don't drink enough water. And I always put an electrolyte supplement in my water because of that.
Yeah, so right, that lowers the freezing point of the water too with those supplements. So that definitely helps. Try it. So Michael said he bought a Hydro pack with an insulated hose. Yeah, please try it. I know personally that I've got a threshold on my hose where I can bring it into the backcountry and be okay with it. I know Trey, another one of the instructors on the call, just tucks his hose behind his back in the backpack, and the heat from his back doesn't freeze. But if you're just looking for a system that is perfect, Nalgene's are great. Store them upside down in your pack too, so the lid doesn't freeze shut on that. That's just full fail proof.
The other thing we don't have on here, which is also really good, is make sure you bring some food and snacks. Even if you aren't going to necessarily eat them, it's like in case of an emergency too. But yeah, that was also by design because we could fill this hole up with all kinds of snacks. Kaylee, what's your favorite snack in the backcountry?
I love bringing hot chicken broth in a thermos. I think when it's really cold out, I know I always have something warm. I really like the salt in that too.
Yeah. Cool. Let's see. And then the last thing, and we talked about this a bit, but really prepare for the unexpected, because you don't want to get out there and have your day ruined by something as simple as like a little blister or, something that could make things totally unavoidable. In addition, there's a bunch of other emergency things, but Leuko tape is one thing I use to tape my heels personally to prevent blisters. Kaylee does not like it. I do. The first aid kit, obviously just something to carry. Ski straps can be used for everything. Gatorade's there that I don't use Gatorade specifically, but any kind of electrolyte supplement to stay warm. Chemical hand warmers. If you want to bring a small thermos, they're super light and they sell them and they're super cheap. You don't necessarily need to bring a Yeti. Any kind of food, and especially some kind of like emergency food too is really good. An emergency whistle, again, part of your 10 essentials. And then the last thing to talk about is the radio, which is not only great for any kind of emergency situation, but it's so helpful because the snow and everything captures sound, and it's really helpful for communication.
Yeah, and we didn't put everything in this slide. So if you take like a winter survival course, you know, they're gonna recommend like emergency blankets or bivy sacks or all that. And again, this comes down to personal preference of what you want to carry. A lot of people have pared down their kit. They start carrying everything, 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 everything. And then over the seasons, they've learned, well, I've never used this, but I needed this. So I'll carry two of these instead. So you know, you just really start to refine what you bring for emergencies. We've got a little checklist for you guys in one of the upcoming slides to help remember all this.
Yeah, and don't worry, we'll make sure that we give you plenty of tips. I like Jacob posted attitude adjusters too, right? It's like if you're grumpy and tired and you woke up too early, you know, sometimes you just need a little sugar to perk you up. Another thing too, and I just remember this, is I buy these like anti-fog wipes, and they really help in terms of like your glasses when you're skidding up because you sweat. And so just another thing. But here's that list that Kaylee told you about. Kaylee?
Yeah, go ahead and take a screenshot of it if you guys want. These are just the basics, and feel free to add, you know, whatever else you guys need. Tape it on your refrigerator, your door when you're walking out for, you know, a tour and it's like 5 a.m. and you're like, oh, do I have everything? You can just look at this list really quick.
And for those listening, you know, even our instructors last year who've been touring for years were like, this list is super helpful. So don't feel shy to do it, to read it. And we should be able, you can always reach out to us too about like, can you get a copy of this? If you're registered for the course, you'll be able to get access to all our lectures. So
yeah, and don't feel bad if you forget something, right? So this checklist is great, but I think all of us have forgotten something at least once. I forgot skins once, and that definitely ruins your day. So think about it. If you forget your boots, your day is over. So there are some things that you can live without, and there's some things that you just can't, right? So consider that, you know, I would say pack your bag the night before too. When you're going out, get all your gear ready so you don't forget anything the next morning.
Yeah. People are asking for ski straps, by the way. And like, if you go to a lot of events too, they hand them out and stuff. So, you know, they're all over.
Every ski shop has them in a variety of colors and lengths.
Yeah. And, you know,
Okay.
could be a new merch idea for next year's course or something.
Yeah, maybe we can get CMC ones made up.
Yeah.
And then, so all of this was a little bit of a preparation for you guys to start thinking about your gear now while shops are getting inventory in before it all gets sold out. The past couple seasons by Christmas, gear has been virtually gone. You know, after Christmas, there's not a great selection. So if you do have personal preferences on a certain brand, length of ski, please shop now. Sometimes you may just have to pony up and pay full price for what you really want. So again, these are just decisions that you have to make. Also, if you're not ready to buy gear this year and you do just want to demo gear, some of the shops will have demo gear for you to take out. It is pretty pricey. So just like your skis or your board can run you around $100. And then there are even fewer shops that offer transceiver shovel probe rentals. So just consider that. And if you do know you're going to take the class or you're going to go out for a tour, please reserve them in advance because they were in really high demand last year.
And I will say this year, Kristen made the point that a lot of places are sold out. A lot of places I've seen are also not necessarily sold out, but are still waiting with all the supply chain issues. I have a pair of skis on order that, you know, who knows when they will ship to me. But like and I was at REI the other day and I asked for winter boots and they're like, we weren't going to get any until January. So out this year may not be actually out, but again, if you see it and you want it and you don't really, you might not want to risk it because it's probably not going to come back in stock before the next season.
Yeah, I mean, Craigslist, Facebook groups, those are other places to check for gear regularly. People are often upgrading, or they decided they just don't use the backcountry anymore and they're going to sell their setup. So please start looking now to build your kit.
And if you aren't following along on the chat too, we're definitely going to go over some of these questions because I think there were some great conversations we'll go over at the end. So anyway, anyway, this is our course schedule. If you're a member of the CMC, it's on the calendar. We have 3 sections, 1 in January and 2 in February. The format is going to be 2 fairly short, straightforward lectures and then a field day. And it's really just to go over all these tips and tricks that like took us years to figure out before you're like, oh, okay, now this is why everyone did it, you know, this thing this way. So
yep, and we've still got spots in all 3 sessions right now. Session A is filling up pretty quickly, then session C followed by session B. And then so the price for the course is $95 for a member price. You can still take it as a non-member, but it costs $165, and that just includes the cost of a membership. So you might as well just become a member and take the class if you're thinking about it. Our lectures are going to be virtual again this year. They usually last about an hour to an hour and a half. And then for our field day, we go to different locations in the Front Range mostly. We'll either go to St. Vrain by Allen's Park. We'll go to Butler Gulch near Berthoud Pass. We can go to Rocky Mountain National Park. And then we are also expecting to have a permit for Mayflower Gulch and Summit because we do have some instructors who live up there. So for each session, we have about 24 students, and then we break into 3 different field groups for each session. So we've got about 8 students in each field group with about 3 instructors. So we've got a lot of instructor help, and you know, we'll define these based on carpooling, mode of travel, all that stuff once we get registration up and going. And so for prerequisites, you need to be a good skier. Unfortunately, the backcountry's got a lot of variable terrain, and so you need to be able to ski powder, ski ice, ski chunky snow. You have to be able to ski it all. Not only are avalanches a risk in the backcountry, but injuries are a huge risk, right? So if you're not a great skier and you have trouble getting down and something happens to you, you put yourself and your partners at risk and rescuers. So we're just saying this for the safety of everyone. So preferably, you know, you've been at the resort, you can conquer the blacks, you're good, you're totally confident, you know, you're ready to go to the backcountry. And we've seen some skiers who are just blue square intermediate skiers try to go into the backcountry and they've struggled because of the variable terrain. So just a heads up on that. Just be confident in your skiing ability. If you can go down blacks and you're slow, but you're in control and you feel confident, you're good to go. And then after our class, you know, this is not formal avalanche education. We will talk about, you know, the avalanche bulletin, how to read the forecast, things like that. But we are not ARI certified instructors. Only one of our instructors is, but we're not meant to be an ARI class. So I just want to bring some awareness to some other avalanche courses going on that you can look for this season too. There's avalanche awareness or avalanche terrain avoidance, they call it. They're usually about 1 hour long. Some of these are free. They're offered by organizations like Friends of Berthoud Pass, the CAIC, the Colorado Avalanche Information Center. Also, Colorado Mountain Club does avalanche terrain avoidance. So you'll see that on the calendar too. And that's just a quick intro to avalanches. That is not your ARI one, which is kind of the gold standard of what you need when you start going out with partners. So the ARI ones get pretty expensive. I think they're upwards of $600 now. That's a 3-day course. And then there's also a 1-day ARI companion rescue course. So that specifically targets how to find your partner if they get buried in an avalanche, and how to dig them out, right? And all that team dynamics and communication at the scene. So that's a different course. So all three of these together would be great to take also as you're starting out your career in the backcountry.
So overall, there's tons of questions that are all great. I mean, and I think everyone that's asking it is asking the right questions in the right way. So don't, be, to me, like I think Jacob Winey brought up the best point, which is the whole point of our intro class is so that you can go and get a taste of what it's like. This is why we have a high student to instructor ratio or high instructor to student ratio with only 3 students per instructor, with all very seasoned instructors. And it's really to get you out there and see if you like it before you go and drop, $4,000 on, gear and education to find out you don't like it. So, and as Kaylee mentioned, those area classes just keep on getting more and more expensive. That being said, if you already know that you're into it, do you need to take the area level 1 before this or after this? It really depends on your personal preference. It's really we've gotten feedback both ways. Some people are like, well, I'm confident now because I took my area level 1 and now I'm really like excited that you taught me how to do it before I went out for my own first tour with my own friends. And then other people have said, oh man, I wish I took this course before I took my area level 1 because I spent the whole time in my area level 1 trying to figure out how to put my skins on. So, it's a real personal preference, but I think the real point is the key for all of this is these classes, the area classes are going to fill up. They're important, but what we're trying to do is also give you an access point where you can try it out too. I mean, there is a interesting and complicated timing component of all that in terms of logistics and supply of courses, but yeah. And then
and we go slow on our field day. We let everybody, get a feel for your gear, try things out. So don't think that, we're just going to rush up the mountain and ski down. So that's not the point of this. We want you guys to be fully confident in your gear and your systems and your transition and how to skin up, how to ride down in the backcountry so that when you do take your airy, that you're confident in your gear. Yeah, you're not thinking about that and you can concentrate on your airy class.
And I think very similarly to, as we talk about this, for skiing ability, the big thing, is it's like, if you're interested and you're like, I just love to ski blues mainly, but sometimes I can still get down to black. I mean, and coming out with a tour with us will help you evaluate, right? Is this right for you? Or similarly, you might find, well, the conditions in the backcountry are terrible, which happens more times than you think. It's not all blow or pow. And like, then you may just want to stay in the resort. It's again, a good real option for figuring out what to do. And let's see.
You can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is a general outline of the class. So on our first lecture via Zoom, we talk about equipment and trip preparation. And I like to think of this lecture more as taking care of yourself in the backcountry. What do you personally need to be responsible for to be a good partner in the backcountry? And then lecture 2 is more on group planning and fitness and traveling as a group. And so this is more of what you need to do once you're actually you're set, you've got your stuff, you've got your gear. Now you need to get partners and plan a trip and go out there. And then our field day. So it's led by 3 instructors, 2 to 3 instructors, but we heavily focus on, input from the students, planning it, where to go, what to look for when you're out there, decision making. We'll practice pacing, we'll practice transitions. Some groups wanted to transition like 2 or 3 times on a tour instead of once. So that was great. So it's kind of all what the group wants. yeah, and then these are just kind of dynamic, and we go from there, and we then we'll wrap up at the end too.
Yeah, which is all good practice. So another fun part about our class, Kaylee.
Yeah, so our course has been fortunate to have a lot of great donors and sponsors for it. So if you do sign up and you are a student in one of these classes, Arc'teryx Denver has extended special in-store discounts for students and use of demo fleet of ski outerwear that we can kind of manage as if you guys want to try stuff out. Rocky Talkies, which was that radio that we had back in one of the slides. We get a 20% off discount code we can share with you guys. And then Black Diamond has been wonderful last year. They gave the CMC a lot of beacon shovel probe sets that we can heavily discount. I think we've only got 7 or 8 of those left, but we will offer that discount code to students who enroll in the class. And then we're working on a couple more.
Yeah. The person who became the business development guy for the CMC is on paternity leave, so we'll know more.
Yeah, and as part of the CMC, if you're already a member, you guys know that members get access to Expert Voice. And so there are tons of discounts on Expert Voice, and they're always changing. They're not always the same. So if you see a deal that looks good and you know what you want, go ahead and grab it. But here's an example of some of the brands that I've often seen on Expert Voice. So mostly, there's hard goods that you can buy on there too. There's also some soft goods. So just be aware of that when you are piecing your kit together. The inventory on Expert Voice is hit or miss also, but you can sign up for like an alert, say alert me when this is back in stock, and it will do that.
And Michael asked a great question here too about our last slide about getting the discounts or the codes. With the shortage of inventory, both Arc'teryx and then CMC, we will be giving discounts out to the discount information out to everyone enrolled pretty quickly because they're all concerned about supplies. So
yeah, Michael, we can email you at the Black Diamond info after this lecture though. Yeah, and some more resources that I saw people had mentioned already in the chat. So Wild Snow and Blister have incredible gear reviews. If you just want to do some more research before you spend a ton of money, please look at those websites. And your local shops are going to be another phenomenal resource. They've worked with many brands. They've had customers come back and give a lot of feedback. They themselves have tried a lot of different brands. So Bentgate in Golden, Cripple Creek Backcountry, they have a couple locations, Neptune in Boulder, Wilderness Exchanges in Denver, Confluence Kayak and Ski. This one actually, Confluence had a lot of rentals last year, demos for students when they were sold out other places. So check there. And then Mountain Outfitters, if you're up in Breckenridge, that's another phenomenal shop. So yeah, please use the resources at the shop too.
Yeah, they're all good. I mean, and all of these shops are like well trusted too. So that's our lecture, but there are Mountain Chalet and the Springs here a ton. There are some really great questions that I kind of want to go back to that I want to make sure that we go to. So one here, and Kaylee, I'm just kind of going up in reverse order. Or actually, I'll start from the top. So one person asked about hybrid bindings versus pin bindings, and the real reliability issues there. My understanding is that the hybrids, especially the shift, tend to pre-release if you aren't very confident with or diligent about checking the AFD. That's the biggest thing. They do have some freezing issues as well, which is probably another good topic to cover, but like that is another thing there. I think for me, and just talking about it in general, it's a lot of it depends on what are you and how are you going to ski and what are you skiing. If you're skiing like a heavier ski, it's really great to get that power transfer over the hybrid binding. But if you're, just meadow skipping like me, you getting a pin binding just is a lot more convenient and easier to use, in my opinion. Other people may have different ones. And I think we could probably debate that all day long. There was another good question here about ski lengths versus ski mountaineering versus ski mountaineering skis versus like your everyday skis and what to use in the backcountry. I'm going to say that, overall ski mountaineering kind of goes beyond the scope of our course specifically, but I think Kristen had a good comment where she sizes down just a little bit, and she uses a 170 and then like closer to like a 180 on regular days. And I kind of do the same, or not really actually, but you're giving up a lot of stability and control and grip when you're going down a size too. So that's important.
I saw a question about airbags a little bit too, and we did say that this is a personal preference. They will cover this in Erie classes as well. Typically, if you're not skiing avalanche terrain, which, if you don't know how to identify that, you should take an Erie. Airbags are not required. They're just an extra safety device. They're heavier, they're more expensive, but if you can afford them and you don't mind carrying them, there's no reason not to. But please, be aware of your ski carry on airbags, right? Since the airbag comes out from the top, you probably don't want to carry your skis in an A-frame. So the more you get into ski mountaineering too, the less and less I see airbags.
One thing, Michael asked a great question, which is, are there CMC opportunities to go out with partners post-class, like small group outings? Yes. The reason why we made our class so condensed is so that our instructors, who are mostly trip leaders as well, can go host more trips outside, as well as the whole point of taking CMC classes, in my opinion, is to make friends, so to go out with. So that's a great question. Michael also asked a great question of waiting to book their Area 1 until how the snowpack is this year. Again, that's a question of, that's a question too of like logistics. Kristen said, don't wait. I generally tend to think along those lines as well. And that's really, even if you don't have ideal things, this is where you can really use the core Area structure to its advantage, where it's like, maybe do you take your Area level 1 early and then you wait until maybe the following spring when the snowpack is deeper, that you take your companion rescue. And don't be shy for asking all these questions, because they're actually really awesome. And I'm sure everyone else on here actually probably has the same ones. And if I didn't get one of your questions, please repost it. Let's see. Anything else from any of our instructors? Oh, do we have favorite skins, Pomoka?
Derek, did you talk a little bit about skins and the mohair nylon mix, or all nylon high traction?
I mean, Pomoka are all nylon and mohair mix, and that's what I love to use more than anything. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say as a beginner, all nylon is going to grip the best. So you don't slide going uphill on the skin track. It's also the heaviest. So
Yeah.
consider that. I think as everyone progresses, they move into a mohair nylon mix, usually like 70 to 80% nylon, like 20 to 30% mohair. So the mohair will give you better glide. It's also lighter, but it's not as grippy. So Pomokas are that mix. And I think a lot of us do ride Pomokas. And then the pre-cut, I saw a question about that. So yes, some skis and split boards have notches in the tip and tail. And so you can buy skins that are already pre-cut. Don't let that deter you. Skins are super easy to cut. They literally come with a little like razor tool that you put the skins on your plank and you just cut it, and it's like perfect. It puts the cut right inside, so you have your metal edge still. So super easy to cut. Don't let that deter you. That being said, I do love the pre-cut tail clips, the little notch in my board, so the tail clip never comes off.
The other thing I would say about that too is it's not all 1-to-1 either, because like all the Pomokas are a mix of mohair and nylon, but they still glide better than the 100% mohair skins from like G3 and Black Diamond. So that's just my preference. Back entry and side entry on backpacks is awesome. It's like the best thing ever. Yeah, and it really depends. They don't all make all packs. I've used the Mammoth Tryon for a long time. I also use a bunch of Arc'teryx packs because we get them now.
Yeah, please look for a ski specific pack too. All the ones that Derek mentioned are ski specific, meaning that they have that dedicated avalanche tool pouch, which is usually waterproof. So if you are using your shovel or your probe, right, you don't get your down puffy in the main pocket wet. It's also a great place to stash your skins or any other wet gear.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason why you want the back or side carry is because you really want to, if you're putting the skis on your back, then it's really helpful to get to your gear. So and that's really for something like, oh, I want to go ski a spring line and ski some corn. Well, you're going to have to probably carry your skis part of the way. So yeah, ski mountaineering also has the same issue, but like, to me, that's the more practical application, is on a nice spring day when you want to go get some runs and hang out in the sun. Let's see. Are there any other questions? And then by this point too, people can also go off mute too, I think. Any more questions? Best post-tour beers. That's highly debated.
The back of your car. Just
yeah.
Tailgate.
We have one vote from Kentucky. Whiskey. Oh yeah, Kristen also has like a great tip where she has like this tripod stool that she uses to sit on to take her boots off, where I really want one this year from like one of my siblings for Christmas. Yeah, and there's a lot of little things. I buy like a carpet square and put that in the back of my car, where I found it at like for $2 at Home Depot. That way, like if I'm doing the whole dance of like trying to change my pants while yeah, that's definitely. And I am not the only one here.
Yeah, you'll learn a lot from us. Hopefully tonight we gave you some tips to help speed along your gear decision-making process, your purchase process, what you need to buy. Taking the class will further reinforce some of these things. We'll give some more tips. And then the most valuable thing you can do is go out and see what other people are using and try things. think all of us are still perfecting our gear. We're always looking for improvements or new or better ways to do things. So once you find the system that works for you, just stick with it, but it will take a little bit of trial and error.
Oh, there's another good question that's very practical. How do we access a recording of this class? I think we're just gonna record it and put it into on like a YouTube page or something for the CMC for this time, but I'm not quite sure.
Yep, give us a few days to work with the office and then we'll get the recording up for you guys to listen to.
Yeah, and we should be able to also send you guys up a follow-up with just a PDF of this presentation too. That's not a problem. Yeah. Great. All right. If there's nothing else, we don't want to keep you on Zoom for too long. We've all been on Zoom for way too long, way too many times the last 2 years. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and we will see you guys hopefully this season.
Thanks to all the instructors who signed in to help with questions on the chat. That was awesome, you guys.
Yeah. The instructors really crushed it on the chat.
Thank you.